To you, crew, back on another Monday with my fabulous co-host, Alyssa Nahara, licensed clinical social worker, myself, Nikki Young, licensed marriage and family therapist. We are off-the-clock therapists, but more importantly, friends that are trying to make mental health a topic of conversation, bring in awareness.
We'd like to just welcome you back. Today is an exceptionally special and important topic. Today, we're going to be focusing on suicide prevention in honor of September being Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. So we'll be walking you through how to talk to your friends, colleagues, family members, children about this topic, warning signs, risk factors, and anything else to really help you guys feel more comfortable with bringing this topic to light and navigating these conversations.
And I'm excited. That sounded bad, but I'm excited because this is my passion, right? Crisis mental health work is what I love. So we're excited to bring some of this to you because if I could get everybody talking about suicide, I would, because so much good could be done before somebody ever even gets to our office, right? If we can help society talk about this. It's out there. It's happening, whether we talk about it or not. Suicide is a thing.
Welcome to the Therapist Uncut podcast, where off-the-clock therapists who happen to be friends share their uncensored thoughts about real life. Join us weekly in spreading positivity and making mental health relatable through casual conversation, inspirational stories, and real talk with friends who happen to be therapists. Please welcome your co-hosts, Nikki Young and Alyssa Nahara.
All right. Let's decide where we're going to get started today, and we're going to do our very best to keep this light for you. But of course, if you notice yourself feeling triggered or activated in any way by the topics that we're talking about, if you notice some of these things sound familiar, let's start immediately by giving you guys a resource. So 988lifeline.org. That's the number 9, the number 8, the number 8. Lifeline.org is one newer resource that has come out. So it's dope, right? Because it's 911, but not.
I know. And I know there's some kinks to be worked out, but I'm super stoked because it's always, when you're doing emergency response and you're trying to provide somebody a phone resource and it's like, okay, hold on, get out your phone. Let's enter this long number, 1-800-243. And so I don't remember. See, I don't even remember the last 4 and I give it out all the time. So same resource now consolidated to be incredibly easy to access. 988 is now your emergency mental health number. And how cool is it that we have that resource available now?
And know that at therapistuncut.com, we have lots of mental health resources, including suicide prevention. But specifically on this episode, we will have all of the information in the show notes. But we just want to make sure that you are taking care of yourself as you are listening to us. And we're going to do our very best to keep it as light as possible.
Alyssa's always so good with the trigger warnings. Like you're just on top of it.
Vigilant about triggers. That's why these are my own trauma responses. And shoot, after we screwed up a few episodes ago, now I'm like, red light, everybody warning signs, and now you may proceed. So that is me being hyper vigilant.
Okay, so here's my plug. I want to start off before, let's just start off with the trigger warnings. I want to start off with a caveat that there are some generalizations that are made when we are talking about overall suicide prevention, right? Because to get this information out there, you got to give some tidbits. You have to give some umbrellas. But risk factors, protective factors, when it comes to anything, but in today's episode, suicide prevention are so very individualized. So there are actually sometimes, and there's a lot of, okay, I'm gonna nerd it out here, but there's a common, I'm going to give an example here, a common, I'm using air quotes for those of you that are listening, protective factor when you're dealing with suicide prevention. It can be affiliation with a spiritual or religious group. And oftentimes that has been correlated as a protective factor. However, we got to make this individualized. There's subgroups where that can actually be a risk factor. And so this is where we want to take the knowledge that we have and really apply it to a one-on-one situation, right? So for example, certain LGBTQ populations, if they have had a negative interaction with their spiritual community or their religious community, that then no longer is a protective factor and it swaps over to the risk factor side of things. And maybe we should start by defining, Alyssa, what are our risk and protect? What are those? If you're not familiar with the term risk factor.
So if we're talking about risk factors, we are talking about populations or groups of people or communities who might be at more risk of suicide or of depression that might lead to suicide. And so risk factors And, as you were talking, Nikki, I was like, she's definitely nerding out right now. And Nikki is this is Nikki's cup of tea. And I was even trying to follow it. So thank you for providing those examples, because I'm like, man, where's Nikki going with this? Okay, I got you now. So if we're talking about risk factors, common populations or communities that might be at risk or at a higher risk might be LGBT populations, might be foster youth populations, might be populations who have past trauma and might be diagnosed with PTSD. And these are all might be in generalizations, but it doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to apply to you in the sense of if you identify as a part of this group in any capacity, then this is going to happen. That's not what that means, but it is something to be more aware of, because research collects all of this data, right? And so
it increases the risk.
The research says it increases the risk. So be mindful of it. Mm-hmm. So in regards to protective factors, I will let Nikki talk about the protective factors.
It's just a flip. Right. So if you have a lot of protective factors on your side, does that mean that you are not vulnerable? Or does that mean that you will never experience suicidal thoughts? Does that mean that you won't ever act on those thoughts? No, it just means that you are less likely to do so.
And now that you say it in those words, I actually find that those individuals who do have these protective factors in place have even a more difficult time, at least in my experience, have even a more difficult time accepting the fact that there's some ideation or thoughts of not wanting to be alive happening, because I should be happy, because I have a house, because I have a home, because I have plenty of money, because I have a support system. Why am I feeling like this? But the reality is it happens. And it happens to the most vulnerable of populations, and it happens to the most, quote, successful of populations. So that is why we wanted to dedicate an entire episode to this topic today, so we can get you feeling more comfortable about this topic, so you can and then take that into your conversations and really just help destigmatize this stigma. Is a terrible way to put it, around suicide.
No, there is, right? There's a horrible stigma associated with it. And I'd like to clarify that we're seeing progress, right? It's becoming more socially acceptable to talk about it. It's becoming more prevalent of a conversation. So it's actually been really cool to see the progress that we've made. We're just nowhere near where we need to be.
It is. And I would like to thank COVID for bringing and surfacing more awareness to this mental health, because it does seem like during the COVID era, while we're still in it, a lot more organizations and people and celebrities are talking aloud about these things. So that part's pretty cool.
Yeah, it does seem like that's been a correlation there for sure. And if there is one thing that I want somebody to glean from this episode, it's talk about it, right? Whether you are the one that is experiencing suicidal thoughts, or whether there's the potential that somebody in your circle is, like, let's talk about it. Let's not shy away from it. Let's make these conversations happen.
One of the hashtags that we came across that really spoke to us in regards to spreading this awareness was hashtag be the one to. And that's the number 1 and 2 spelled out TO, because it really comes from a place of be the one to talk about it, be the one to save a life, be the one to ask questions. And I believe it came from the organization that we referenced you guys to in the beginning on 988lifeline.org. So correct me if I'm wrong. But
I believe that's where it originated. I could be wrong.
I think so too. So that's a great hashtag to check out as well. Social media can be wonderful at spreading education and awareness, but in the same capacity, like that you listen to our content or you consume this content for media, always do your extra homework to decide where you stand on these issues or what you want to do about it. So we're going to give you the best information we can today, but do what you want with it.
No, and speaking of that, let's talk about some of the misinformation out there. One of the reasons, part of it's the stigma, but another reason that people don't talk about suicide is there's been misinformation out there that if we talk about it, we are more likely to increase the risk of suicide. And that is not, it's not accurate. There is a little caveat here. So I'm going to throw this out there. This is higher level, like assessment stuff, but I think it's important to know. Talking about suicide, if you suspect that your friend, spouse, child, neighbor, whoever it is, you have warning signs, you have indications that maybe something's off with them, and you suspect that maybe they're having suicidal thoughts, talking with them and having those direct conversations is absolutely not shown to increase that person's risk of acting on those thoughts. And notice I said acting on those thoughts. We should wrap back around to that, Alyssa, about terminology around suicide and death by suicide. But talking about it directly is not shown to increase the risk. I don't know where exactly that came from. There's a little caveat of research where talking about it directly does not increase the risk, but we also don't want to normalize it as if everybody does it or experiences it. And that research comes from research that's done on like PSA ads about drinking, PSA ads about drugs, that kind of thing. When they are phrased as though everybody does it, so let's talk about it, that can have a counterintuitive effect, right? We don't want everybody to believe that everybody has the potential to die by suicide. So there's kind of this differentiation.
It's a fine line.
There is a fine line there, but just directly talking about it, normalizing talking about it, right? Normalizing that experience, absolutely not shown to increase the risk of suicide, quite the opposite.
So if you have ever feared or worried that if you brought this word up or brought this topic up with a parent, a colleague, or a child, that you are now like opening this Pandora's box, and what this is going to communicate if you directly ask about it is, I see you, I care about you. Are you experiencing pain? If so, tell me about that pain. And are you having thoughts of wanting to die or not wanting to be alive? Are you having thoughts of killing yourself? Does that sound very blunt? Yes. But at the end of the day, being more comfortable with these conversations can be really important for somebody who might be experiencing these thoughts. And Nikki mentioned thoughts, meaning having these thoughts or acting on these thoughts. There's kind of different phases that we're looking at. Mm-hmm. But we want to make sure that we can be the person that somebody talks to, so we can also help you support and navigate resources, or say, hey, let's call 988 right now. I'll do it with you. And they've got someone who could talk through it with you. Mm-hmm. So having that comfort to have this hard conversation, and it can be super uncomfortable.
So how do you do it? And Alyssa hit the nail on the head. Let's say you have an indication that somebody, whether it be somebody in your family, a friend, a neighbor, colleague, whatever it is, you suspect, right? How do you talk about it? And Alyssa used wording that I really, really like, right? Because it's so uncomfortable, a lot of people shy away from those direct conversations, right? We might, I've heard clinicians, and it makes me cringe, ask kids, do you feel like hurting yourself? That's not what we're talking about, right? I mean, yes, that's an important question to ask, but that's something different, right? There's self-harm, and then there's suicide, and they are very different things. And let's say what we mean, right? Uh-huh. And Alyssa hit the nail on the head. Are you having thoughts that do you prefer to be, would you rather be dead? Is life too hard? Are you thinking about killing yourself? That's what we're asking when we're talking about suicide prevention.
So we are asking you to get more comfortable around having these conversations wherever you are, or even having these, if you're experiencing any of these thoughts, being open to accessing your support and your resources and having these conversations so you can have support around you to navigate these thoughts. The goal around suicide prevention is to increase awareness, to increase understanding of resources, to increase understanding of risk and protective factors. So, and I'm going to tell you right now, if you are, or if you have ever experienced any kind of suicidal thoughts, you are not the only one. Absolutely not. It might feel that way, but you're not. You are not alone in this. And I feel like I'm dropping into like not lightheartedness. I'm going to pull myself back because I don't want to make this episode.
But it's true, right?
But it's a hard topic to talk about. Yeah, we're talking about suicide. We're talking about death. We're talking about risk. But there are resources. You are not alone. And Nikki had mentioned, what kind of words are we using to describe these things? And one of the things that comes up that some of us may be used to saying is X committed suicide. And if you haven't heard this yet, there has been a shift in that language to X has died by suicide. And it's these small changes that really the entire culture around increasing this awareness are trying to make so that we can contribute to destigmatizing suicide.
Because let's break it down. Yes. When do we use words like committed? Do we say that somebody committed diabetic, what's acetic acetita, whatever fancy medical words? No. Are they experiencing that? Yes. Did somebody commit heart failure? No. Are they experiencing heart failure? Yes.
Mhm.
But what do people commit? People commit
Crime.
crimes. People commit burglaries. People commit aggravated assaults. And it really just, it says a lot when we take a step back and look at how we've been talking about it.
And language is important. It is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And depression is an illness. It's a mental health illness. And there's been so much stigma around the differences between physical and emotional and mental health. But your brain is an organ, one of the most complicated organs in our body.
And I'm just thinking, we're highlighting suicide prevention. And I do want to speak to those who have ever experienced the loss of somebody important to them by suicide. And I don't want to negate any experiences that you might have had around, I had these conversations. I really felt like I did everything I could. And this was still what happened. Mm-hmm. And so when we say suicide prevention, we're really talking about like as a whole of increasing awareness, education, resource linkage, so we can help reduce the rate of suicide and help reduce, the outcomes of acting on these suicidal thoughts. But you might be a person who has been in this place with somebody that you care about, and you're at a place where you feel like, I feel like I'm doing everything that I can, but I'm feeling helpless. Like, what else could I have done? And this is not to say anything negatively about that experience. That's a very valid experience. And so I just want to make a little note to that.
Oh, I think it's an important note, right? Because as the support system, you can do everything right. You can do every single thing right along the way. And that person that you loved or cared for can still die by suicide. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of guilt and shame that can come after that of what could I have done more? But that doesn't mean that you did anything wrong. That does not mean, let's equate this to cancer, right? If somebody gets a cancer diagnosis, you can do everything right, and that person can still die from cancer. I know it's different, right? Mm-hmm. But it's also not. It's also not.
Mm-hmm. So it's like that aftershock of the guilt and feeling like you should have done something different, could have done something different. And if that has been your experience, we encourage you to work through that through either therapy or support groups or whatever that might look like. But I just wanted to make sure we brought that in as well, because that can feel very emotional and activating for some people as well. Mm-hmm. So how do we look? What do we look for? What might be some warning signs that somebody might be struggling with suicidality?
So I think there's also, if we're talking to just the public at large, right, or somebody that doesn't have knowledge or training in this particular area, we might associate suicide with depression, right, or severe depression or long-term
or self-harm, depression. Like you mentioned earlier,
Mm-hmm.
when they are two very separate things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, is suicide associated with depression? Absolutely. But there's also many incidents of suicide where this person does not have a history of depression, but there was some major life event that was so overwhelming that they just couldn't see a way through, right? Job loss, diagnosis, grief and loss, losing somebody. Mm-hmm. So I just want to clarify that we are not just looking at a long-term mental health condition that ultimately ends in suicide. There are also individuals with no notable history that experience something so devastating that they just can't see their way through. So that's an important note, right? If you're worried about somebody because they're acting differently, but you're like, they've always been fine, let's still check on that person, right? Here's another caveat. Somebody's dealt with bipolar disorder or depression for 13 years. And you're getting some warning signs, but you know what? Hey, this person's had this for a couple decades. They probably know what to do. No, let's check on that person.
I like checking on that person because what we've noticed, especially, I would say my husband and I during COVID, the relationships shifted so much, both, in person, social media relationships, whatever you want to say, they shifted. There's kind of no arguing that. And what we learned is that when somebody goes silent on us, it's probably a good idea that we should call and check on them. And when I mean going silent, somebody who is typically responding to you within X amount of days or time, they're not doing that anymore, or they're not returning phone calls. Do make the extra effort to check on them, because what we learned is And we followed up with these like, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. I sent you a call, sent you a text, or maybe even we were the ones that were not answering a call or a text. What we learned is the common theme was they were just so overwhelmed with whatever was happening in their personal or professional lives that they may have started to isolate and may have been dabbling or may have been already actively in this like depression. But we realized it's easy to be like, dang, what did I do wrong? Why aren't they calling me back? And it had nothing to do with this at all. I could think of probably 3 different people where we finally made contact. It was really because they were battling some like heavy form of overwhelm or depression or sadness or withdrawal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think you hit on it that it was the change in behavior.
Yes.
Right. So for example, if any of my family or friends are listening to this, they're laughing because it's a regular thing for somebody to have to reach out to my wife and say, will you please tell Nikki to check their phone? Right. So if I stop responding or don't respond for 6 days, nobody's particularly concerned about me. But like, let's view that on the flip. What if somebody's not super communicative and all of a sudden they are reaching out left and right? Hey, do you want to grab dinner? Hey, do you want to hang out? And that's unusual for this person. Maybe they're reaching out for help. Mm-hmm. Again, we don't know, right? It could just be, hey, they have a renewed energy and they've got more time or whatever. Or maybe the person that has kind of gone a little bit silent, maybe they're writing a book and they're just super focused, right? Doesn't mean worst case scenario, but why not check, right? Why not show humanity and just be humans, check on our fellow humans.
So a drastic change in behavior is definitely something to be mindful of and to consider. Or it might be as blatant as statements of, I don't want to live anymore. Mm-hmm. And that can cause the person on the receiving end to be like, oh, shit, what? Yeah. What am I supposed to do? I listen right now? What do I do? And it can cause panic. So we're just going to ask you to recognize whatever that might cause in you and just ask yourself to do your best.
Oh, yes, you do. Down. Stop being silly. You're just stressed out right now. You don't mean that.
That's a panic reaction, guys.
Bam! Shut it down.
Feel that.
Yeah. And is that person? Yeah. And is that person likely to come back to you and try again?
Definitely not.
When it's 2 a.m. and they're lying wide awake and they've got a bottle of pills in their hand and they are contemplating ending everything right in that moment, are they likely to reach out to you if that was your response?
Being conscious of what that response is, trying not to panic, especially if it's your kiddo. As parents, we have a default reaction. We have to really actively be conscious of not reacting.
And
it's so hard.
And that doesn't mean that you're going to get it right every time.
Right.
But we had this conversation a couple of weeks ago in an episode, right? You are not always going to get it right. We didn't. Mm-hmm. But wrapping back around, right? So maybe you do have a response. Maybe you never expected it from this person. Maybe it scared the shit out of you. And so you had a reaction, right? Maybe you didn't respond in the most open manner. Wrap back around.
Always. It's not comfortable, but it's usually the best thing to do. So always consider how you can wrap back around to that.
Could save a life.
Other statements that could be potential warning flags, and we say could be potential because it's not necessarily that if these things are happening, they're experiencing suicidal thoughts, but there are things to think about. So if there is somebody who, we talked about isolating more, yes, but if they're making blatant statements, if they are relaying to you that they feel like they're a burden or an inconvenience consistently, and everyone else would be better off if I wasn't here because I'm just a burden on them. That B word.
All I do is fuck things up.
Yes. The B word is a big one.
All I do is make things harder.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And making things worse for people. And it's a true belief that they are. And it's a true belief that if I wasn't here, everyone would be better. Of course, logically hearing this, especially if it's someone you love, they're like, well, of course it wouldn't be better. But it's that internal battle that somebody might be experiencing. Behaviorally wise, if you're noticing an increase in alcohol or drug or a combination thereof, that could potentially be a warning sign. Mm-hmm. If you are noticing they are almost preparing to die, and you're like, are you sick?
Getting their affairs in order.
Yeah. Are you sick and you didn't tell me? They are giving you passwords to things. They are literally putting those affairs in order, like Vicky mentioned. They are
giving away of possessions.
Giving away possessions is a big one.
And it can be subtle, right? It can be very blatant, where it's like, what are you doing? Are you moving? Are you downsizing? Why are you calling all of us? Or it could be subtle, like, hey, I came across this necklace that, I know has always meant a lot to you. And we've talked about it. I'd like to give that to you. Again, sometimes that's just somebody being genuine and kind and considerate and giving a gift, right? So we're not saying that, again, these are warning signs. These are risk factors. These do not indicate that something is destined to happen, but let's ask questions.
Absolutely. And then one that really sticks out to me that comes up often is they have been in this very dark place. We've all known, but last night, 2 days ago, I really thought they were getting better. Why? Because they were laughing more and they were smiling and they were engaging. And I can't remember what this world calls this. There's a name for it. But what you might be experiencing is not that they are, quote, getting better and battling and working through these depressive or suicidality ideations, but the fact that they have decided what their next decision is going to be, which is acting on these thoughts. And the fact that they have accepted it and come to peace with it.
Yep.
And then something happens.
Yep. If somebody has had a period of time where they have been very depressed, very distressed, very irritable, insert negative experience here, and suddenly they are not, they are at peace, they are bubbly, like Alyssa said, that can very often mean that they have made a decision and they feel some degree of comfort in that there's an end date coming, that they won't have to endure that for much longer.
I know this is so difficult to listen to, especially if you've had any experience around suicidality with yourself or with a loved one. But again, our goal today is to help increase the awareness, make this conversation a part of your conversation so we can help destigmatize suicide. And I keep saying suicide and depression. So we can help destigmatize suicide. That is the goal. We want to help reduce this, right? We want to keep you alive. That's what we want to see.
I think we've been kind of harping and emphasizing on talk, do not avoid. But what are some additional tangible things that we can do, right? So you learn that somebody in your circle, one of your people, is experiencing or you suspect suicidal thoughts. You learn that, yes, this is accurate. What can you do? Right. So sorry, Alyssa, I interrupted you.
Nope, I didn't even start. Go ahead, Nikki.
Well, so you know what I've learned? I don't know if our listener, obviously, if you're watching, you can tell that we are back virtual today. But I have learned as we've been back in studio that I can read you so much better in person and not interrupt you, because I can sense when you're about to talk, something shifts, right? But when it's just your face on a screen, I recognize that I am not so great at that. So I apologize.
Well, thank you. But at the end of the day, it's all good. I feel like we got it anyways. Go for it.
Okay. Tangible action points. As always, we are going to talk, right? Have these conversations. Check your responses. Talking to the person about suicide and blaming them. Talking to the person about suicide and dismissing or diminishing what they're experiencing. Guilt tripping them. Any of that's going to do more harm than good. So if you are not the person to do that, then get somebody who can.
I think more so with maybe the adolescent population, because that's where I see it more, but it could definitely happen in the adult population as well. But provoking them, almost responding in a way that sure, you're not going to do it.
Do you know how many individuals over the years that I have evaluated that have been pushed in that way? You talk about it all the time, you don't do anything. Or again, more in the adolescent population, just do it already. I've had parents tell their kids, stop talking about it and just do it.
So if those are all the things you should not do, we would advise you not to do.
Yeah, just don't do it. And earlier I said then find somebody who's capable of doing it appropriately, but also no, just get your head out of your ass and do it the right way. Come on.
We don't want to cause more harm at the end of the day. We don't want to cause more harm as a parent, as a friend, whatever it may be. So let's talk about what you can do. So in addition to asking directly, do you feel like you want to die? Do you feel like you don't want to be here anymore? you want to go through the steps. And I almost want to go through the steps, but actually I'm going to have Nikki go through these steps because Nikki goes through these steps all the time. And literally this is Nikki's cup of tea because Nikki is so passionate about this topic. So I'm going to skip that. I'm going to let you do that. But then you might also be a part of like the follow-up action plan. Maybe this conversation leads to going to 911 to an emergency room so they can get assessed by a professional. Maybe it's
so
calling
plug
911.
You can go to any emergency room and they will be able to get you an emergency psychiatric evaluation. Fancy language for a therapist, a clinician, a social worker to come talk with you about what's going on and what protections, what safety plans, what services we can and need to put in place to keep you alive and safe through this crisis. Not that it's going to fix everything. And I tell every person I work with, this does not mean that we're going to snap our fingers and everything's okay. This means we are going to get enough support in place so that we can get through this time safely so that you can continue to address what's going on in a safe way.
And for those Avengers fans out there, this is not a Thanos snap your finger, everything's going to be okay. So if you don't watch Avengers, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But if you like Avengers, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So
I don't think I had any idea that you like Avengers.
Oh my gosh, I love Avengers. What? So not a snap your fingers Thanos kind of solution, but you can be a part of what comes after that. So maybe it is removing weapons or items that might be harmful to this person. Maybe they disclosed a plan to you, and maybe it is coming into the home and ensuring that those things are not accessible. Maybe it is being the one who is in charge of giving them the prescription medication that they are prescribed.
Because let's talk about this for a second. If medications are a part of treatment, which oftentimes they may be, especially if we're looking at a diagnosed mental health condition, we do not want the person experiencing suicidal thoughts to have access to their medication, right? Overdose. So somebody needs to be in charge of administering that medication. Right. So if doc starts Zoloft, Seroquel, whatever it is, somebody administers the medication at the time. And here's another thing. This can be very uncomfortable. Make sure they take it. Right. It is not intended to be demeaning or to make somebody feel like a little kid, but we are making sure that they take that medication. Don't know how common it is for somebody to pretend to take it, pull it out, and stockpile it. If somebody is absolutely intent on ending their life, they are done, they are dying, they're going to take steps like that. So just making sure those meds are actually ingested.
Yeah, we know that's easier said than done. And in giving this medication, there's a lot of barriers that can come up, but it is something tangible that you can do to help keep somebody alive as they get the treatment that they need to work through this part of their life. Other things that you might be able to do would be to remove the alcohol from the house. We talked about things that might be harmful to them. That could include alcohol. Attending with their permission, because they would need to give you permission to do so, but attending doctors and psychiatric appointments with them. So you can also be a part of the treatment or being a part of their therapeutic treatment, of course, with their permission. Actually, I take that back. I'll speak for the two of us, but in any therapeutic relationship where somebody is at high risk and we are worried of suicide, that's one of those things that might break confidentiality to say, hey, we need to pull in this one person so we can make sure we can keep you safe and alive as we work through this part of your treatment. So for the most part, you have to get permission to access, health records and treatment plans.
And it depends, right?
Yeah.
Like everything in life, it's a spectrum. So if somebody had some brief suicidal thoughts, had a really, really, really rough day, week, whatever situation is, absolutely has no intention on acting on it, had the thoughts, realized they were having the thoughts, very quickly dismissed them, went and talked to us, right? Very low risk for suicide. That does not mean we're pulling people into your treatment without your consent or knowledge, right? But these are in emergency situations where in order to ensure that you're living another day, in order to ensure that you're going to be around tomorrow, the next day, yeah, we will, as a crisis clinician, we will absolutely want and need somebody to be involved in your treatment. And that doesn't mean we're going to go willy-nilly making these decisions without you.
No.
Right? Like, hey, let's figure out who your best support is. And oftentimes that's not the person that's your emergency contact in your chart at the hospital. Right? Maybe that person is contributing. Maybe it's maybe it's a minor and their parent is actually causing more distress than help. Maybe they're the ones that's saying, just do it already. I'm tired of hearing you complain about it. Right? Can we pull in an aunt, an uncle?
Somebody who is going to keep you safe
Exactly.
And
And my challenge to all of you out there is to be that person. Be that person that we can utilize to really wrap around with safety. And Alyssa, go ahead.
Oh, those are some tangible things that we can do as somebody who is supporting an individual who might be going through these suicidal thoughts. And I'm going to wrap back around to Nikki, because I would like you, Nikki, to talk about what series of questions might we ask at the onset when somebody says, I just don't want to live anymore.
Mm-hmm. And so ultimately, I am going to give the caveat that this is not all on you, right? So you can do a fantastic job as a support person, but you are the support person. You are not the professional. Even if you're a therapist and you have a family member or a friend experiencing suicidal ideation, thoughts, whatever it is, you are not their therapist, right? You need to be their friend. You need to be their family member, whatever it is. So let's get this person support. And Alyssa started to hit on that and I interrupted her. But if it's an emergency right now, I need support, or I'm not sure this person will be alive, emergency room. All right. If you can't get them there, 911. Let the 911 operator know that there's a suicidal concern. They are going to ask if there's any weapons. Sometimes people actively have a weapon with them. They need to know that to keep everybody safe, right? But letting them know what's going on. If it's not an emergent in this moment, I need emergency services, then let's get this an personal appointment with their doctor, with their therapist, with their psychiatrist, whatever the most appropriate avenue is. But let's get this person connected. All right. So that's my caveat. But just like with anything, when we're talking about suicidal thoughts, we've got a spectrum. All right. So you're going to start by opening the conversation, right? Asking the questions. Hey, I noticed that you mentioned, you keep saying that like you cause more stress than you bring joy to anybody's life. Like you're just saying some things like that I'm hearing that you feel like you're a burden. What's going on? All right. Starting with those casual conversations. Hey, I notice that you have, what's another example we talked about already? I noticed that you've been giving away your stuff, right? Like, I know we've talked about that someday I will inherit this and all this, but what's going on, right? And if you do discover that they've had some suicidal thoughts or you suspect, asking those direct questions. Like, hey, I'm only asking this because I love you, because I care about you, because I've noticed these things. And I know that this is not the easiest thing to talk about. So I'm going to ask you to maybe pause before you just give me an answer and like actually think about it here. Because the only way I can support you is if I know the truth or what's actually going on. I don't like using the word truth because that implies somebody's lying if they're not ready to share, right? But are you thinking about suicide? Right? Has that popped into your head at all? And then based on their response, you can go from there, right? Don't immediately rush through okay, I asked this, now I have to move to this. But here's some key points that you want to hit on along the way is, okay, that happens, right? Suicidal thoughts pop in. How often are you thinking about it? Right? Is this something that somebody is dwelling on at all times? Is this a thought that popped in once after, they had to go home and tell their spouse they lost their job and they haven't had them since? Like, where are we at with this? Talking about the fact that, okay, like there's a lot that can mean. What are you thinking about? Is it more like, man, if a lightning bolt took me out right now, I'd be totally fine with that because life sucks? Is it, this would just be a hell of a lot easier if I were not here? Or has it progressed beyond that, right? Have you started thinking about actual suicide? Like the people out there die by suicide, right? Robin Williams, people in the media are celebrities. Maybe you know somebody. Are you thinking about that? Have you started to think about, well, you know what? Like that's an option for me, right? Have you thought about killing yourself? And what does that look like? Maybe that's where it stopped. Well, I don't know. I mean, I thought about killing myself, but it didn't go beyond that. Or did somebody think like, oh, well, what options are there, right? Oh, I could use a gun. I could get some pills. I could, right? Have you started to take that step of really thinking through what that would look like? Okay. The further we get down the spectrum, the more dangerous we're getting, right? The more dangerous of a situation we're finding ourselves in. Has somebody started to plan it, right? Sometimes people will set a suicide date. That's, I think, a little bit more rare. Sometimes people will, once I resolve this, once my kids start school, once this happens, then I'm going to act on it. Have you started to accumulate items that you need? Have you started to purchase what you're going to need to end your life? I mean, we're getting into really, really, really giant flashing warning signs at this point, right? Also, a question that can be overlooked is, have you acted on this? Have you tried to kill yourself? Not hurt yourself, but kill yourself. Have you tried to kill yourself in the past? Recently, years ago, at any point in the past? And then again, like we've got all these warning signs. Let's also find out if this person wants. Are they going to do this? Do they plan and intend to do this? Are you going to do this? Like, is this something you want? And you're going to get different reactions. Sometimes people are absolutely done, and this is their way out. And sometimes you're going to get, I think about this all the time, like, this feels like the only way out. I think I'm just going to overdose. Like, but I don't want to. I don't want to do this. Nothing else is working. I don't know what else to do. Right? Asking these questions. Now, if you are anywhere in any of those last few questions, getting affirmative answers to any of that, we are wanting to get some pretty emergent or immediate services in place. But have these conversations.
And so when Nikki just walked through is, you're asking about ideation.
And ideation is just thoughts, right?
Yes, I know. I'm dropping into my clinical language. You are asking if they're having thoughts of suicide. If it is a yes, you're moving into, is there a plan?
Yeah. And they thought about methods, right? Like thinking about not waking up in the morning, or, I'd be okay if God took me off this planet. Like, you hear that a lot, right? Like, if somebody's religious or spiritual and they believe that they were put on this planet, like, why? Just take me already, right? You hear that a lot. Has that moved into methods? Thinking more about what you could do and what you would have to do to take it into your own hands.
And then the third one is intent. So those are the ways that you can navigate these conversations, and just be ready for whatever comes, and just be ready to be there. And hopefully we were able to give you some solid examples of how you can navigate these conversations if and when they come up, or how you can open these conversations if they don't come up, but you're feeling very worried that this might be something that's going on. Yep. And as a reminder, we want to give you the resource of 988. That is going to be your crisis hotline that is available 24/7. But you can also contact your nearest emergency room either by driving there directly or by contacting 911. So there are resources available. Just remember, therapistuncut.com. It's where we're going to have all of these links and all of these resources, specifically on this episode show notes, but also on our general mental health resources page.
We appreciate you giving us the time and listening to this. It's one of the most important topics out there. If we can spread the word on how to respond in these situations, just might save a life.
Thank you for allowing us into your lives today. My name is Alyssa Nahara, and I am with Nikki Young. We're both licensed mental health professionals, and we will see you on the next episode of Therapist Uncut. If you have not done so already, head over to the website at therapistuncut.com. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast, or subscribe to our video podcast on YouTube. You guys take care.
Thank you for joining Therapist Uncut, a production of AMP Smart Business. To learn more about Therapist Uncut and stay up on upcoming episodes, please subscribe and follow us on social media. As a reminder, although the Therapist Uncut co-hosts are licensed therapists, they are not your therapists. This podcast is not intended to substitute professional mental health counseling. If you need professional therapy, please contact your local provider or primary care provider. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of Therapist Uncut.